Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going on a really fascinating analytical journey into the very fabric of the universe, reality, and human purpose. We're going to be unpacking Tafheem al-Qur'an's commentary on Surah Ar-Ra'd, which translates to the thunder. Our goal in this explainer is to break down the step-by-step logical arguments it presents about the actual design of our cosmos.
Right off the bat, we have to confront the ultimate philosophical question. Seriously, think about it. When you look up at the night sky, or even just look down at the little ecosystems right outside your window, is this finely tuned, incredibly precise system just chaotic randomness? Or does it point to a singular, intentional designer? Let's see how this text builds its case using the natural world around us.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're looking at Maulana Sayyid Abulala Maudoodi's foundational commentary. And what makes this specific analysis so brilliant is how it bridges theology directly with natural philosophy. It isn't just asking you for blind faith, it's asking you to actually use your intellect. It wants us to look closely at the mechanics of the universe and treat them as tangible, observable evidence.
The argument opens on a massive, macrocosmic scale. It highlights the verse stating that the heavens were raised without pillars that you can see. Now think about that through a modern scientific lens for a second. We're talking about the unimaginable, invisible force of gravity holding colossal planetary bodies perfectly in a vacuum. That sheer suspension, without any visible physical supports, is presented as the very first major proof of an infinite designing intelligence.
Expanding on that idea, we have the flawless operation of celestial bodies, all running for an appointed term. Think about the underlying logic here. If there were multiple, competing forces or deities trying to govern the universe, this incredibly precise system would inevitably crash into total chaos. The absolute uniformity of physical laws across the entire cosmos undeniably points to a single, supreme governing law.
Now let's move to Earth and see how this builds. We're shifting our gaze from the vastness of deep space right down to the ground beneath our feet. Look at the sprawling landscapes, the firmly rooted mountains acting like giant stabilizers for the crust, and the incredibly intricate river systems. The exact same deliberate engineering that we see in planetary orbits is mirrored right here on our own planet.
And then, consider a biological marvel that we honestly walk past every single day without a second thought. The commentary points out something so simple but profound. Adjacent tracts of land that are watered by the exact same rain. The environmental inputs are absolutely identical, yet what grows out of them is astonishingly diverse.
Let's just use our own logic here for a moment. You have the exact same soil structure. You have the exact same water falling from the sky. Yet, side by side, one tree produces a sweet date and another produces a tart grape. Completely different molecular structures, totally different tastes. Can identical inputs logically result in such drastically different outputs by mere accident? The argument here is that this diversity is a glaring signature of a conscious, deliberate choice.
So, having established the mind-boggling complexity required to create both the macrocosmos and our intricate Earth biology, we arrive at a really fascinating intellectual pivot. The text takes this established premise of creation and applies it straight to the theological concept of resurrection. It asks a highly rational question. If the original creation is this masterful, why on earth would anyone doubt the possibility of a second creation?
You know, the text doesn't shy away from opposing viewpoints at all. It impartially outlines the skeptic's argument, and the rational doubt is pretty straightforward. Humans die, their bodies decompose, they turn into dust, and their elements just scatter across the earth. From a purely materialistic standpoint, the skeptics ask, when we are dust, shall we indeed be created anew? It's a very natural, logical question regarding the apparent finality of physical death.
But here's the logical refutation. It highlights a massive inconsistency in the skeptic's worldview. If you observe the incomprehensible power required to generate the universe from literally nothing, the gravity, the stars, the complex biology, and you accept a creator did all of that, it's totally illogical to claim that same creator lacks the power to simply reassemble existing dust. If that incredibly difficult first creation is undeniable, well, recreation is logically a much, much simpler task.
And this brilliantly illustrates a shift in the text. Having established this solid philosophical groundwork, we move into a really beautiful literary space explaining human morality. It shows how the Quran uses physical nature to explain abstract spiritual truths, introducing this powerful visual analogy that compares truth and falsehood to how natural elements behave during a massive flood or metal smelting.
Let's break down this visual metaphor because it's a real game changer. During a flood, or when you're melting metal in a furnace, A massive amount of scum and foam rises right to the top. It looks huge, it's loud, and it totally dominates the surface. That represents falsehood, superficial and ultimately completely empty. Very quickly, that foam dries up and just vanishes. But the pure water that actually nourishes the earth, or the heavy precious metal left at the bottom, that represents truth. It might sit quietly, but it endures. It actually benefits mankind.
Understanding this fundamental difference between the fleeting foam and the enduring water completely shifts the narrative to our ultimate human choices. How do people behave when they actually internalize these massive cosmic truths? The text examines the differing behaviors of those who recognize the designer's signs versus those who just stubbornly ignore them, starting with the idea of a fundamental moral contract.
For those who align with the enduring truth, what the text calls the wise, these aren't just abstract spiritual concepts floating in the clouds. They are highly practical, everyday social actions. These are people who strictly fulfill their promises and actively repair familial ties. They operate with a constant sense of personal accountability. They are exceptionally patient. And maybe most intriguingly, they actively break cycles of toxicity by choosing to repel evil with good.
On the flip side, what happens when someone just totally rejects the overarching order of the cosmos? By ignoring ultimate accountability, their worldly behavior naturally degrades. This worldview leads to breaking social contracts, severing ties, and spreading corruption. And why wouldn't it? Because if there is no ultimate designer and no final accounting, well, your immediate selfish desires, the superficial foam, take total precedence over any enduring social good. So the crucial point is how we ultimately weigh our human priorities. The text draws a very stark contrast here. The life of this physical world is described as just a brief, passing enjoyment, very much like that temporary foam. The hereafter, however, is the ultimate enduring reality, just like the pure water. It acts as a profound warning against trading an infinite, permanent reality for a finite, fleeting illusion.
And that brings us to the core of our explainer today. We've journeyed from the invisible forces holding up the stars, to the miraculous diversity of fruit growing from identical soil, all the way down to the social behaviors that define our human integrity. It all circles back to one vital framework: knowing the loud, fleeting nature of the foam, and the quiet, life-giving permanence of the pure water. Which will you choose to align your life with? Thank you for joining me, and keep exploring.